Today, we're talking about the 10 lessons I learned from the best-selling book by Gabriel Wyner called Fluent Forever, and how it changed my language learning journey. If you're new here, kamusta mga kaibigan? My name is Matthew. I used to work for Fluent Forever and was mentored by the American polyglot and best-selling author Gabe Wyner. Since branching out on my own, I've realized that I just love learning languages. So I developed my own strategies, my own tools that I hope can help you too. Before we talk about the 10 tips, I want to talk a little about my background and why my perspective really matters regarding this book. A few years ago, I was working in Latin America and I was there living, trying to survive. And as you know, the main language in Latin America is Spanish. And I really struggled with the language. I needed to learn it for my life, to get by every day, and also for my work, to make money and to make a living. I had tried learning a language before with tutors, with classes, with textbooks, but in all of those cases, I never got to that golden stage of fluency. I never got there, and I was really frustrated. So this time around, when I needed to learn Spanish, I wanted to find a clear and definite path that had been paved before by another successful language learner. And that's where Gabriel Wyner's book came along. It had just been released and I discovered it. I saw a few reviews and I got into it. This book really changed my life. It not only helped me to gain more confidence in learning Spanish and figuring out ways to get started, but it also changed my personal life as well and my work life. I got a job at Fluent Forever and I learned many of the secrets of what Gabriel Wyner himself was doing to learn languages. Heck, I even helped Gabe make some of his own personal Japanese language learning flashcard decks, which was so exciting. Working with Gabe and helping thousands of others in the Fluent Forever community through my work helped me take my foundational learnings to the next level for language learning and achieving fluency. Through the lessons I learned, I even achieved the DELE B2 Spanish certificate, and I continued to learn other languages as well. And I still use many of the foundational learnings I got from Fluent Forever to this day. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from Fluent Forever that changed my life and changed my language learning journey. Lesson 1, self-directed learning. Gabe emphasizes in the book that it's important to take control of your own language learning. Self-directed learning for me means taking full responsibility for your language learning and your progress. Other resources like classes and apps and native speakers certainly are useful, but at the end of the day, you can achieve fluency largely on your own, but you need the large amount of dedication and you need the right approach and attitude. In the book, what really inspired me were the little stories and anecdotes of Gabe going out trying to learn French and other languages, especially for his job as an opera singer. Because he was busy with his job, he had to learn a lot of it on his own. Lesson 2, an evidence-based approach. I also really liked that Gabriel Wyner used a lot of scientific evidence within his book. As you can see, he's got different kinds of diagrams and charts. He bases a lot of his approach on scientific research from linguistics as well as neuroscience. And that gave me a lot of confidence and peace of mind because it meant that he wasn't just making up a lot of his ideas, but he was basing it on solid evidence that had worked for others before him. And I guess the lesson from that is that you too should base your language learning on scientific research that actually works. To learn to remember, we must learn about the nature and location of memory. If you understand how the brain actually acquires and retains language learning information, then your studies will be much more effective and efficient. Lesson 3, learn from role models. What I really liked about the book was that Gabe Wyner himself had learned many different languages to fluency. There was French and Italian and German and Russian. He had already faced different obstacles and had overcome them, and I wanted to speed up the process. So following his steps would save me a lot of time. So it does help to learn from other people who have already achieved what you aspire to do in language learning. Role models like Gabe can really provide insights, strategies, and motivation for your language learning journey. Lesson 4. Have a systematic approach and plan. Success in language learning requires that you have a structured system and a well thought out plan. Thankfully, in Gabe's book, from the contents, you can see that there is a clear plan from sounds to words, sentences, and the language game. So if you follow these steps, it can really help with your motivation and clarity as to what to do next. This helps you keep focused on your language learning. Lesson 5. Using spaced repetition and flashcards to improve your memory. One of the biggest challenges with language learning is memorizing and acquiring the thousands of vocabulary needed for fluency. As a solution, Gabe suggests using the idea of spaced repetition to improve your memory. Now, spaced repetition is all about repeating certain pieces of information, like vocab, over different spaces of time. You can use flashcards, such as the one shown here inside the Fluent Forever book, as a way to do spaced repetition, and using tools like Anki are a great way to do it automatically. Now, I actually love Anki because I'm a bit of a specialist in it, and that's what I was working on a lot of the time when I was working with Fluent Forever. So I know that effective memorization through spaced repetition and flashcards can really be a game changer in your language learning journey. Lesson 6. Perfect your pronunciation. Of course, as a language learner, you could probably never perfect your pronunciation to the same level of a native speaker, but in the Fluent Forever book, Gabe really encourages you to improve your pronunciation as best as you can. An accurate accent is powerful because it is the ultimate gesture of empathy. Now, this was something really unique about the book that I hadn't really heard or discovered when I was doing classes or working with tutors before. Because Gabe was an opera singer, pronunciation really was important to be able to sing well and connect with his audience. Gabe provides some simple techniques to help with the way that you produce sounds in a language, such as using minimal pairs where you compare different words and the unique sounds between each of them. So overall, Gabe's message is to work on your accent and pronunciation early on in the process so that you can continue to learn new words with the right pronunciation. Lesson 7. Focus on high-frequency words. Prioritize learning the most common words in a language. This will help you to focus on what really matters and help you to hone in on words that you're most likely to encounter on a day-to-day basis in books, in movies, and when talking to other native speakers. Lesson 8. Make grammar simple. This lesson was something I also really liked in the book, and it was about avoiding tedious grammar drills. Instead, find the most common grammar rules in the language, then make simple flashcards for them where you target those grammar rules in the context of real sentences. This approach helps you get by with grammar fast and helps with your understanding and retention. Lesson 9. Think in the target language. Shift from translating in your head to thinking directly in your chosen language. Gabe suggests you should stop relying on English translations or explanations in your native language. Instead, you could use pictures as a way to convey the same meaning of your word in another language. You could also use explanations or definitions within the other language, or you could learn the foreign word in the context of a sentence that a native speaker would actually use. And in that way, you learn the new word without having to use English or your native language at all. Lesson 10. Personalization and meaning. Make your language learning journey personalized and meaningful for you. You will remember a concept with a personal connection 50% more easily than a concept without one. So what that means is when you've learned the basics of the language, you'll then have to go out and learn a lot of the language on your own. And the best way really to do that is to find what interests you. Go out and learn words and phrases that are relevant to your life, your job, your social interactions. And when you do that, you're more likely to remember and experience the language in a rich way so that you can gain motivation as well as retain that information without having to really try so hard. Now, as much as I loved the Fluent Forever book, there were unfortunately some gaps that I did find in it after having learned languages for a number of years myself and trying to implement everything that was in this book. And also having worked within Fluent Forever and with thousands of other learners in the community. One of the issues I think is that the book can often only take you to the lower intermediate level. You'll often find you'll reach a plateau and you'll discover that you actually need to learn a bit more things that aren't covered in the book. For example, there isn't as much explanation of how to use input and acquiring language from native materials. The book doesn't go into too much depth about the ideas of comprehensible input and acquiring a language through reading books and watching movies, and it doesn't tell you how then do you use all of that input to reach fluency. Another gap that I saw in the book was that it didn't talk so much about how to practice speaking fluently. It talks about a lot of the foundations to build your network of words and grammar and sounds, but then how do you transform that into a way that you can speak fluently and practice it and deliberately improve your speaking output. Gabe himself talked about his experience going to Middlebury College. In Middlebury College, students have to only speak their target language. And that's how Gabe Wyner got really fluent in the spoken form for a lot of his languages. He doesn't really talk about how you yourself can get spoken fluency if you don't go to an expensive immersion course like that, or you don't have the ability to just travel to a different country where the language that you're learning is spoken. Another issue that I found is that this book was written several years ago, and so some of the technology, tools, and ideas are a bit outdated, and the world has changed. So those were the 10 lessons that I learned from Gabriel Wyner and his book, Fluent Forever. They really influenced my language learning journey. They changed my life in work and in how I interact with others. And if you like this video about the Fluent Forever book, go check out this other video that I made about how I reached Spanish fluency and got the DELE B2 Spanish certificate using a lot of what I learned from this book. And hopefully we can use the learnings from this book to continue getting fluent forever.